Hi, everyone. It's Bethany, and I'm so excited today to be here. And in honor of College Savings Month, we're going to be interviewing South Carolina Treasurer Curtis Loftis. So I'm going to add him to the stream now. Hello, Mr. Treasurer.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing? We
You
are
know,
so,
busy. I thought we were not going to be busy this summer. I thought by the time I got older in life, we wouldn't be so busy, but we have lots going on.
yes. Well, we are so excited to have you today. We recently surveyed our readers, and they had a lot of questions about college savings, and we're excited to talk to the expert of South Carolina about these questions.
Well,
So before we start, though, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into the questions our readers have.
well, thank you. You're in Greenville, is that right? Are you in
I
Greenville?
am.
Yeah. Well, my folks are from Spartanburg County, and so red mud runs deep in my valley. I remember as a kid, we'd go to Spartanburg or Inman, actually, almost in Greenville County, to see folks, and they'd say, "Don't you get in that red mud?" And of course, we're 10-year-old boys, right? I didn't understand red mud, black mud. What's the difference? Now I know. Once you own your first house, you know the red mud. So every time I'm with folks from the upstate, I enjoy it. I'm from Columbia, graduated from the University of South Carolina. Been private business all my life, and somehow stumbled into public office. Don't ask me how. And but I do enjoy it. It's a busy time, and the college savings plan is a lot of fun for me. You know, a lot of time we spend with deep spreadsheets and workbooks like this. You know, that's you got to go through it a couple hours and make decisions. College savings plans is something that we know helps a lot of normal, average people like myself and like you. So I really enjoy it.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and you pulling out those worksheets kind of leads right into our first question. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. I couldn't put the whole thing on here, so I'm going to read it out loud. But one of our readers said, college affordability scares me now, and I'm sure the price tag of higher education will be even scarier in 10 years when my oldest child starts college. Why should I start at $529 when the costs just seem insurmountable? I don't know if we will ever be able to afford college. I feel like a deer in the headlights. And just before you answer, we polled our readers, and the cost of college was the number one thing that most people said was keeping them from saving for college.
Yeah, it is. I started college in '76, and it was only $366 a semester at Carolina. You throw in
Wow.
$100 for books and stuff, and you see how inexpensive it was. Now it's well over $12,000. So saving money is the same no matter what you're saving for, and investing, because it is not just a savings account, but money's invested. The sooner you start, the better. And it's not hard. We renegotiated our contract a few years ago with the big bank, and when it came to start an account, I said, "You've got to idiot-proof it. I've got to be able to do an account. I've got to know how to go to the computer and do it myself without having an 18-year-old kid standing beside me," right?
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So it takes about 30 minutes to open an account. We made sure that when you open that account, you don't even have to put money in it today. You can just say, "Good, I got that done." And then you can start when you want. You can draft money in there. You can put money as it comes along episodically. A lot of people will open an account and say just draft like $10 a month. That way they see it every month. They start inviting their friends and family, people like that, to help, and it grows. If I'm walking through a mall or down the street, people say, "Hey, Mr. Treasurer, we're so happy with our 529 plan. Can't believe how it grows." And that's, of course, just the time value of money. If you leave it alone, put it in those accounts, let us invest it, you'll be ready.
I love that. That's a good idea to start with just something manageable like $10, even if that's all it is.
Yeah, we've even got
So can you?
young ladies who aren't even married yet, or don't have a boyfriend, aren't getting married. They know the cost of debt, and they'll open an account on themselves, start that $5 or $10 a month or whatever, a week or whatever, and then as their income grows, and when they finally get married, have kids, and all that, they're set, they're ready to go. They've already got money, and then they open make it a more traditional investment for themselves and their spouse.
That's great. That's such a great idea. So can you tell us what is a 529 plan, and what's the benefit of a 529 over other types of savings and investments?
Well, the 529 plan, it tells you how boring the world is that I live in, the banking world. That's the IRS code name. I mean, it's the code section, 529. Can you imagine such a thing? But it's a college savings plan. Our brand is Future Scholar. Each state has a different plan. We're lucky. The General Assembly said, hey, we're going to give the people in South Carolina a generous tax deduction, and we're going to make it easy for them. So they send that package over to me, and it's my job to run it. What makes our plan so much better than average, if you'll say, is that when you put money in the plan, you get a state tax deduction. So if it's the mother or father, they get a state tax deduction. But if it's the grandmother or grandfather, if it's your neighbor, whoever writes that check gets the deduction. And then, of course, so that's a start. Then as the money grows in the investments, it grows state and tax free. And for folks who know investing, that's the big thing. You know, if you have to pay taxes on money as you make it, well, that's never good. But it grows tax free like an IRA. Then when you pull the money out for educational expenses, for the approved educational expenses, which is broad, it again is tax free. So you've beaten the tax man on 3 different occasions.
Wow. Now that's a good plug for it. So can you tell us, why would we want to choose Future Scholar, the South Carolina 529 plan, over other 529 plans?
Well, the tax deduction is a big one, because if you have to be a South Carolina resident to get that. There are a lot of plans that don't have that. I have a nephew in Texas. They don't have a tax deduction. Well, he can buy one of our plans, or he's 1 year old. He's probably not going to be buying much of anything. But I've got somebody looking to make sure that our plan performs better than whatever plans are available there. And it looks like our plan does, because we're one of the better ones. So we'll open account for him. And even though he's in Texas, if the South Carolina side of the family puts money in there, we get a tax deduction. The folks from outside of Texas don't, but that's their problem.
That's very helpful. Now I have someone who's watching just asked a question. Lily would like to know, what if you leave South Carolina?
Great question. That's the first thing that comes to everybody's mind, because we have the South Carolina Future Scholar Program. These plans are so flexible. I mean, if government did everything as well as they've done these plans, we'd all be happy. You can use the Future Scholar plan at any accredited 2-year school, 4-year school. And the 2-year schools include the tech schools, the trade schools. There are specialty schools, like there's a specialty diving school in Charleston. There are some of these cooking schools. There's a lot of them. I don't really know them all. But it's accepted there, and those same places all around the country. So you can go to Harvard, you can go to South Carolina, you can go to Pepperdine, you could go to a trade school, say in Oregon State, because you want to do something they do out there a lot. There's even 600 schools around the world, outside the country that you can go to. So it's so flexible that you don't have to worry about spending your money. There will be a college ready to take your money.
Now, speaking of flexibility, I know one of the things we are wondering is, how can the money be used? So can you expand a little bit on that?
Sure. This is a little bit from left field, but just before COVID came along, the feds changed the rules. They said, okay, we're doing this for higher ed, but we want to make sure that other educational opportunities are taken. If you'd like to have a child go to K through 12 private school, it'll pay the tuition. In South Carolina, it pays up to $10,000 a year in tuition. Most private schools don't cost nearly that much. I've got a nephew at a Catholic school in Charleston. I think it's like $6,000 a year. And all of his tuition is paid by the Future Scholar Plan. It doesn't pay for books and things, but it does pay for that. Going on to college, it pays tuition, room and board, computer, books. Most of the things that the school requires are you required to go to school. It's a broad list, and it changes with time as time goes along. Like, I'm sure laptops weren't part of the deal a long time ago. They are now. It's a very flexible list, and we have very few complaints about somebody that can't spend the money appropriately.
That's really good to know. So can you tell us a little bit about, this is a question that came in from our readers. What is the average cost of public and state cost of attending college in South Carolina, and how much money do they need to save?
Well, it depends. If your kid is 6'6" and can run the 40 in no time, he can go to school with Dabo Sweeney, and they won't charge him anything. Carolina tuition is over $12,000 a year.
Okay.
The tech schools are a fraction of that, $3,000 or $4,000 a year. And you can get lottery money. Some people will get smaller, other kind of small scholarships. So there's a lot to go into it, of course, but you can probably never save enough, And if you have multiple kids, you have multiple issues. Like your first kid, maybe the one you start off with, he's the oldest, obviously, and you've got money in that account, and maybe you don't have as much for the others. But if the first child goes in the military or gets a free ride because of academics or athletics, or maybe he's just a great chef and wants to spend a year or two at chef school and get out or whatever, you can take that money and transfer it to another child.
Okay.
So while you can never save enough, you don't have to look at it from the sense of every single dollar's got to come from me. If you're, the lottery in South Carolina pays for a lot of people's school, or pays for a portion of it, excuse me. Those kinds of things. But it is not inexpensive. And if you think your child's going to go to a 4-year school, you should have started yesterday.
No, it's very helpful. Do you have any kind of financial calculators on the Future Scholar site that people can use?
Yes, and that's very important. You can sit down and play with those numbers and get a better feel. It's going to cost a lot of money. So the sooner you start, the better. And the longer the money's in there. But also, it's how do you get money in that account? And you mentioned calculators, having other people help. Now, how does that work? You obviously can't go down the street with a cup. But your mother and your father and your grandmother and your grandfather, your friends and your family, if they're like me, I don't buy my nieces and nephews presents. They've got everything they need, at least by my standards. When I came along, we walked to school uphill both ways in the snow, so they've got everything. New kids have everything. But if I'm sending an evite or an invitation to give for the high school or a bar mitzvah or birthday or something, high school graduation, a check, I'll do it every time because everybody likes to give that gift of education. We've made it easy. You just go to the website. There's a little button you push. It'll send invitations out to the people you tell it to send invitations to. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way. We have something you can print out and send them a letter. But think about it. You can be at home and you say, oh, little Bobby's got to have a present. You got to get in your car. You bought the gas and paid sales tax on the gas. You got to drive down to Walmart and buy a blue sweater, and the kid's got 4 of them. And he doesn't even like blue. Or you can stay at home and write a check, and you get a tax deduction. You didn't have to go through any of that. So for even just if it's not the philanthropic, for the lazy people in us, we will give that check to education every time.
No, that's really great. So you guys hear that out there. If your kids have too many toys, this is what you need to tell the grandparents your kids need for Christmas. I have another question from someone who's watching. Charlie Thompson says, if a child has a full scholarship for tuition, what are additional ways they can use the fund?
Well, room and board. There's a ton of, when I was in college, hardly anybody studied overseas. Now I think just about everybody does a semester. I mean, it depends on your major, of course. But I've got a nephew going to Spain and for the next semester, so I'm kind of going through it. There's no end to the opportunities to be able to spend the money. Plus, you also have grad school, and then you can keep it if you don't use it all. And then there's a fair amount of people who will go back to school later on. It's a new phenomenon. People are retiring earlier, or especially kids now, they never actually go to work. They're staying at home, they're working on their computer. It's a different world, right? I have a godchild that graduated from Stanford, and now and then went to Duke Law School. He got hired on with this huge patent firm in DC. He's never been to their office.
Wow.
He got hired in a hotel room, makes a fortune, and he works from home. Well, if he wants to go back to school, which he could do at any time, he could still do it right now, in fact, if he wanted to. Yeah. But you keep that, and it stays in that envelope. The money, it stays, it grows. It's like an IRA type of thing. And you can go. We knew somebody who went to Pepperdine to go to law school in their 50s. Well, Pepperdine, if you think about it, isn't Malibu in California. Okay. It's on the ocean. That's not a bad place to go and have a little semi-retirement. And if you say something to them about going back to law school at 55 or 6, they say, well, in 3 years, I'll be 60, but now I'll be 60 and I'll be a lawyer. That I'm going to be 3 years older, except I've gone to Pepperdine and got my law school and the 529 paid for most of it. So it's if you think about the opportunities and the way modern life is, it's a wonderful thing.
That is great. And just to put up here, India said she found where there's some common questions on the website that can be answered. So thank you, India, for sharing that. That's in the comments if anyone wants that. I also have a link for the financial calculator that I'm going to put up in a minute. But let me ask you another one of our questions. We were wondering, are there any minimum or maximum contributions? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, we don't have any minimum contributions. The plan maxes out per person at $525,000, I think it is. $525,000 is the lifetime that person can have, the money can be put in that person's account. I think there's a yearly limit, but I can't remember. Maybe like 35,000. Well, let me take that back. That's a number I haven't looked at in a long time. But the important number you want to know is the 525, because these things factor in as far as people's estates, grandpas, and myself. I'm to the point where I've got to do a lot of estate, and I'm about to fund some 529s. I can do it now and do it over some period of time. I get a tax benefit, and the children are able to take advantage of the money in 5 or 10 years, as opposed to, I wait till I die and they take it and they buy a car. I don't want that.
Yeah.
They'll have a nicer car than I would have. We don't want that.
Another thing that our readers had asked is, will a 529 influence how our family is viewed in terms of ability to pay by financial aid offices, FAFSA, etc.?
Yeah, no, there's actually a calculation that's done, but it's tiny. It's like the smallest amount of your 529. It's insignificant. And I don't even know how it even came out to be such a thing, because it's just, like I said, it's insignificant. But what is also happening is it's before Congress now to do away with that a little bit.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I really can't say it enough. Congress looked at this, and in the General Assembly, our state representatives, they looked at this and they did a fantastic job of what does the average person need to go to college?
Yeah.
And it really, without fail, they've done a good job.
So I know we've kind of already talked about this, but what if someone's not sure their kids are going to go to college? Should they still start at 529?
I would, because we mentioned some of the things like trade schools and specialty schools. Well, something that's big now is, it's just started really, but it's becoming a bigger thing, are registered apprenticeships. A lot of people never even heard of them, but where a college and employment places get together and they say, well, you're going to work most of the time at this place, but you will have a little classwork. So it's not like you've just sat down and get 4 years or 2 years of college. It's really a common sense issue. It started up north mainly, but it's coming down south, and your 529 pays for that too. So I think if your child gets to the age where he or she's there and they don't want to go to college, that's not a bad thing. If you have to get into the plan, there's a penalty on some of the money that you've made, but it's not regressive. You wouldn't be sorry you did it.
That's good to know. And also we did have a clarification that I guess it's 5.64% of the account value that's considered against financial aid. So that was the exact number we were looking for, if anyone's wondering.
Good.
So I know we've talked about this a little bit, but if you can just expand on it, because it's such an important thing about how other people can contribute to these accounts.
We hear, of course, we mentioned the evites, and that makes things easier. And sometimes people think, well, I don't know that I want to do that. But after you talk to the average person, they get it. We live in a world where there's a lot of material things, and when people get the opportunity to give a gift that's special, they do. And this is one of those times you can do that without buying somebody a house for a wedding present or a car or something. It's something the average person can do. We have, I can't tell you how many times I have grandparents say, hey, we get a couple hundred or a few $1,000s back, whatever the story is, every year on our taxes. We give that to our grandkids. Or
Wow.
Somebody sells a used car and they don't need it, especially as people get older, maybe they don't need 2 cars, they just have 1 car. They put that in these plans. Once it's known that you're saving and it means something to you more than just being a savings account, it becomes special. We hear more and more of these types of things that are happening. And again, we had a kind of it was an unfortunate thing. I had a niece die early and unexpectedly, and they have a year-old child, and they hadn't done a plan yet. So now the family's getting together. We're going to fund it, and the child's college will probably be fixed here in the next year or so. Well, if we didn't have that conversation going on about this, it wouldn't have happened. But we talk about 529s, obviously, because I'm here. But my nieces and nephews have them. I've got one at Watford now. I've got one at mid school at Carolina, and they've all enjoyed their plans.
I feel like that's another really good point as far as like families going ahead and starting it, even if they don't feel like they're ready, because your other family and other people who might be interested in contribute can't contribute if there's not a plan. I mean, obviously they can start their own, but if you have a plan, then there's an easy way for them to contribute to it.
That's right. Almost every man dumps the change out of his pockets at night, and at the end of the month is $20 or $30. If you just put that in there, you'll be surprised over the course of 10 or 15 years at 6 or 7% interest, because we invest the money, of course, what it all adds up to. It's every little bit counts.
And I'm going to drop a link about the information on gift contributions into the chat for those who are interested. When you were saying that, it made me think, can you just expound a little bit on compound interest and what that means for the growth of these plans?
What we actually do is the plan now is $5.6 billion. That's with a B.
Okay.
And so it's a huge plan. And we have professional money market managers that take care of manage the plan. Our team is 100% involved. We have 2 consulting firms that ride herd on the whole thing, looking for problems. And we have CPAs and auditors and actuaries. I mean, it's really, I have the luxury of having plenty of money to make sure the plan is run in the way that's most advantageous. And I forgot the question now.
I was just asking about like how the interest affects the growth of.
So what I was getting to is more than interest. There's a lot of talk in the industry. Should we change the name from college savings to college investment? Because actually it's an investment account. It got stuck in the savings, and whenever you change the name, it's hard. And there are 50 states, and nobody can make up a decision. So we're trying to get something done there. But we actually invest the money. And when you are open your account, you've got a few choices. If your kid is not born yet, or if it's 1 or twice, or 1 or 2 years old, then you've got a long time. You can take the more aggressive route. If your child is, say, 10 years old, 11 years old, you don't have as much time, so you're slightly more conservative. But that allows us to invest the money, and we invest it gainfully. We're conservative investors. We're not looking for home runs. We're looking to make some money each and every year, because it does add up each and every year. And with the tax-free part of it, it makes a huge difference.
That's really good to know, and also a real encouragement to start saving, whatever we can for this. We have another reader question. They wanted to know contributions count toward total maximum contribution. What if a rich uncle wants to toss $10K into my kids' account for their birthdays? Which sounds like a good problem to have.
That's a great idea, and I hope he's an uncle of mine too. No, that's not a problem. Again, you have that limit of $525,000 in the lifetime of that account. So let's talk about some flexibility. One, you tell your uncle you're the best guy on the planet. Send me 10, and we'll look for your check next year too. But at the end of the time, if you've got multiple kids, you can swap that money around. Your first kid doesn't spend it all. Oh, guess what? Bobby Jr. just got a larger account. It makes a difference.
And then today, before we close, I was just wondering if you could tell us how we can open a Future Scholar 529 plan account. And then while we're here, if anybody's in the comments and they still would like to ask a question, you can go ahead and do that. I will be watching that.
We try to make it as easy as possible. It's Future Scholar futurescholar.com, futurescholar.com.
Okay.
If you're not, when you get there, it should take you probably 30 minutes or so. If you're not particularly good with the computers, or you just get confused, or sometimes how things go, there's an 800 number, and the person you'll speak to is inside the United States, and they are well trained on this plane.
Okay.
They weren't just hired yesterday, and you're not going. And they're first-rate people. I used to go through the facility once every few years, but after a while, it never changed. It was first-rate. It's state-of-the-art. And so we feel so good, I kind of stopped that. But you can feel good about it. It's really important.
That's really helpful to know. We did have another question come in while you were talking, which is a really good one. Iris wants to know, can you open an account for an unconceived child?
Yes. Open it in your name. The flexibility is such that then you can transfer it down, and and there's no penalty. The flexibility, but especially within the families, is amazing. Mm-hmm. And, I come from a big family, but we didn't have all this back then, but we would have done a lot of that, because we had folks who go into college and graduated early, and had some who, not me, of course, but we had some that had a difficult time getting out.
Well, I just wanted to tell everyone, I did put the link to futurescholar.com down in the comments too, so that they could find that there. So thank you so much for coming on with us today. I just wanted to pull up, Julia said, what great info. And India said it was really helpful.
Well, tell Julia in India before I go, I just met a man from Greenville in the lobby of the building. He was down here, come to the treasurer's office, because he was filling out some paperwork to get his $72,000 of unclaimed property. He's going to check for $72,000 that he didn't know it was coming. Why do I bring this up? Besides, I like talking about unclaimed property, is that if he had young kids, and he doesn't, he could put that into his plan. The unclaimed property office is here at the treasurer's office. We have $700 million. If memory serves, Greenville and Spartanburg are like $100 million. I could be off on that, but it's something like that. People think, oh, I'm smart. I do accounting. I don't have any money. We chase down people and give them checks for $300, $400, $500, as much as $900,000 to people. Go to the treasurer's office, treasurer.sc.gov, treasurer.sc.gov, unclaimed property. Put your name in there. Put your wife's name, put your maiden names, put your mom, your dad, put your pastor, put your church, and any money you find we send it back to those people. If it's for you, you can, or your grandparents, you say, well, why don't I put this in my 529 account? Gramps.
That is a good idea.
Yeah, like the people of Greenville and your followers, they'd like you to go get that money.
So we're going to find that link, and we're going to put it in the comments. You all need to go check to make sure you don't have any unclaimed property. If you do, you need to put it in your kid's 529.
That's right. That's right.
So I think some of my takeaways from this is, if we don't have a 529 started, we need to get it started before Christmas, so we can make sure to tell our family that we have it started. And if they don't want to give our kids more toys because they already have too many toys, they can contribute to their college savings. That's
exactly right. You know what? Look, you're smiling and you're having a good time with this. That's what it's supposed to be. You take college from being this drudgery to, look what we're doing. And we're going to, come hook or by crook, we find a quarter on the side of the street. It's going into fun, right? No more blue sweaters. We're going to have a good time with this. And you'll be surprised how much difference you can make. It'll take a great load off of you.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on here and giving us so much helpful information. Thank you for your time. And thank you to all of our readers who watched. If you're watching this later because you couldn't catch it while we're live, still drop your questions in the comments. We'll get an answer from the treasurer's office for you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for what you're doing. There'll be people who start college in 18 years from now who you will have forgotten about them, and I will have forgotten, but they'll remember because they started their account because of this conversation. Thank you.
That is